Our first technique that we're going to actually do right now is a very simple technique, and it looks like this. Looks like this. Can you guys see what I just did? I'm going to do it again to make sure everybody caught that. It goes like this. All right. So I'm going to ask you guys to actually do that. And guess what? What do they say about teachers? It's the hardest. Look at all these computers I still see up. Look at this table back here. Could somebody help them? And guess what, guys? What will I do? I will wait. I will wait. Look at that table over there. Somebody help them? I'll wait. All right, there we go. Uh-oh, we still got one. One thing you guys are going to have to do in blended classrooms is classroom management is different, okay? I will tell you right now, computers, phones can be a constant distraction, okay? Throughout the course of today, of this week, I want you guys to even just kind of judge how much of a distraction they can be through the sessions that we're going to be doing, okay? So in you guys judging that and seeing that from yourselves, you're also going to have a sense of what students are going to be dealing with in these new classrooms, right? Here's the other piece. You're going to also have to become very smart about how you have students help other students get in line. Does this make sense? So when I asked over here, we had like 3 people over there that had the, and I didn't go over there. I said, can you guys help your colleagues, right? Because a big part of what needs to happen in these new classrooms is building a new kind of culture, right? Building a new kind of culture. And sometimes it's going to be uneasy because things are going to seem a little bit out of control, right? It's not going to be the same level of I'm the teacher and everything is happening around me. It's going to be a lot of other stuff going on. And there's going to be a lot of anxiety in that. So part of what we should do this week is feel, you guys are kind of like students right now, right? Feel what that feels like so you can begin to understand how your students are going to also be reacting to, wow, we've got all these new devices, this new technology, this, there's going to be a level of energy that comes out of that we're going to have to manage very carefully, all right? So my goal of this afternoon is to spend just a little bit of time with you all in actually beginning to talk about the what, all right? But before I go into that, let's just get some of you guys know like elephant in the room, right? Elephant in the room is like the thing that everybody's trying to get to, but we hadn't really talked about, but we kind of did talk about it, right? Some of what came out that I heard this morning is, does anybody feel like this? By a show of hands, anybody feel like this? Could you please just get to it, right? Okay. Is anybody wondering this? Like, why are we going through all of this to get to just give me the computers, right? Just show me what to do. Anybody wondering this? Right? Okay. And is anybody feeling this? Oh my goodness. There's like anxiety out there, right? So I really, really get that. So let's do something together. And can you guys tell what that is? Can you guys tell what that is? A map, right? It's a map, but be a little bit more specific. Look at it. It's a what? It's flat, right? It's flat. So for hundreds of years, there was a prevailing, right? This is what people thought the world was. Or you guys remember that? It was kind of like, if you sail off, If you sail too far, what's going to happen? You're just going to fall off of the world, right? So the problem was this, number one, this wasn't true, right? So in people's minds, when they realized that this wasn't true, right, their world changed, yeah? But the bigger issue was during this time, they did not know what they did not know. Does that make sense? So, right now, I would argue that we're actually in this world again, where schools, teachers, principals, school districts, an entire world of people that are being part of this teaching of students, we're back in a place where we actually don't know what we don't know. And I'm telling you this because I actually have the good fortune of traveling around the United States and now around the world, actually seeing that all over, people don't know what they don't know. So the world, in many ways, we're back to flat again, right? And there's all these unknowns out there that we have that we just don't even know sometimes what questions to answer. So you guys see this other image I have on the screen now, right? Does anybody here know what happened in LA? LAUSD, one of the largest school districts in the US. Has anybody heard about what happened in LA when they tried to do what you guys are doing right now? Anybody know? Anybody want to guess what happened? I mean, the answer is right there, right? So they rolled out an iPad initiative, and guess what? They canceled it. There's a reason that I'm showing you this, all right? And the reason I'm showing you this is because eventually you guys are going to see that there's a method behind this madness that we have, all right? So anybody want to guess why this thing might have been canceled? Any guesses around, like, what could have gone wrong? Teacher training was a big, big issue. Other folks? They didn't have a, say it again? They didn't have a method. That's actually a great one. Anybody else want to guess? Aha, okay. There was actually issues there around administration, right? Any other guesses? Not understanding, right? And that was actually at the teacher level, the student level, across the board, okay? So what was interesting about what happened with LA, and can everybody, like, am I talking, you guys are good with how I'm speaking now, right? Yeah. We're good? Okay. So what happened in LA was a couple things. One, they just threw iPads at teachers, right? Threw them at them, right? They went through a little bit of hands-on training, all right? But here's your iPad. Okay, now teachers, go do this, do that, do that. Okay, now go, run. You guys should be ready. And were they ready? No. The teachers did not know why they were doing it. They didn't have the vision for how this was supposed to transform classrooms, right? So when the kids then got to those classrooms and they saw the teachers not really clear on the purpose behind those things being now a huge part of the classroom, the kids were like, oh, we're going to go and play videos, right, and play games and go to all kinds of sites that kids have no business going to. And so as that began to roll out, the school district realized what was happening, and that huge initiative that they thought was going to transform classrooms went like this. Boom. Canceled. Okay. So, that's not to scare you. However, that is to say this. The issues that took place in LA actually were not technology first. The issues in LA was that there wasn't a willingness across the board for teachers, students, administration to do a few things: to grow, to learn, to listen, to unlearn, right? Because when they just threw those iPads at those teachers, there was no priming. There was no, let's get an understanding of why we're even doing this, right? So there was no unlearning that took place. And guess what? the willingness to change. So we spent the whole morning, right? You guys went through, remember the exercise when you went like this, you had the finger there, and then you had to look at your eye, and you had to see which eye. Here's why that's important, is because every single one of you in here is going to hit a point in your classroom come August, come September, where you're going to get those computers out to those kids, and something's going to happen, right? And it's not going to go so well, and your first inclination is going to be what? Not working. Shut them down. Shut them down. Let me get back to the center. All right, kids, get back into your rows. All right, we're going back to what we were doing for the last 30 years. This is why this morning was so important. Because if you don't first understand this process for you and how you react to it, then that's what's going to happen. And that's what happened in LA. When those teachers didn't have a sense of themselves in the process, when things began to go wrong, it's all falling apart, put it down, kids were going to go back to regular instruction, and that's when the district said, okay, you know what? Scrap the whole thing. All right? So, in all of this, a word came up this morning, right? You guys remember this word came up? You guys know I'm working on my Spanish, but I'm picking up things here and there, and I think this word came up, didn't it? Yeah? And so my question really is about this, right? I know I'm in a group of people that know this word, right? I know it. Can anybody tell me what they think this word actually means? What does that word mean? We always say it, but we don't really unpack it. Any volunteers tell me what this word means? Right here. I'm going to give you the microphone. Hold on.
Once a priest told us that faith was letting themselves go into the arms of God. And he said, we do it every day, like when we get on a plane. We let ourselves go into the hands of that pilot. We don't know if he's going to crash it.
Yep. Beautiful. Anybody else want to add to that, how they view faith? Yeah, right there.
It's like when you tell your students that you believe in God and they ask you, prove it, and you say, I feel it, I sense it, and I know he's there. So I think if we were to define faith, faith is believing in something that you're really not sure about, but you feel that it's there and it could work.
So the way that I look at it, thank you both, is it's a trust and a belief in something you cannot see, right? So remember that world that we showed earlier, right? That flat world? Well, guess what? Here's what we know, right? And when I'm saying now we, I'm talking very specifically about the team that you have in front of you actually knows that the world is not flat. We know that the world is round, right? I will go as far as to say to you all that every single school that I've been at does not yet know this because this is new, right? And so what we're asking is, what? What do you think I'm asking you right now? To have some faith. That's what I'm asking, right? To have some faith, and for even this day and as we move into next week, to have some faith. I've heard the term before, suspend your disbelief. You ever heard the term before? Suspending your disbelief for just long enough for us to get you guys where we know we can get you. I'm saying have a little bit of faith over the course of this next week that we're going to get you there. All right? So, for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to just tell you why you should actually trust that, and then we're going to get into something I think you guys are really going to enjoy, and that is the activities behind seeing, what is this whole new world of blended learning? All right. Why should you trust? All right. You guys have all heard of this university. You guys know this is who we're working with, right? We are right now working with literally the smartest minds in this world around this work. Every single day that Redbird is doing this work, we are actually doing it from the foundation of this university, right? And part of what's taken place is, I'm going to give you guys a few stats. I'm going to ask you to go with me a little bit, okay? So professional development is a tricky thing. All right, what we're doing right now with teachers, with you guys, is a tricky thing, okay? So tricky that this is what happens. So there was a study done by the Institute of Educational Services, all right, IES. And when they did this study, they looked at 1,300 different implementations of teacher training, right, what we're doing today. They looked all around the U.S., and they looked at 1,300 different groups and settings just like this. Guess what they found? They found that out of 1,300 times that teachers came together, 9 were shown to actually be effective. That's awful, right? Are you guys surprised about that? A little bit? The number is really low, but sadly it's not surprising because what we're doing right now with you actually is something that so often happens and does not work, all right? So the problem is that when most times teacher training happens, it's generic, right? It's sporadic, right? It's like all over the place. It's not very well thought out, okay? So part of what my work has been with Stanford this year, I'm going to continue to give you guys information right now. So if I know that, let's say this box right here represents where you guys are today, all right? It represents your skill level today. But I know that I want to get you there, right? So I want to get you from there to there, all right? So there's a way that we can do it that is actually very much like the status quo, right? We could do things like, do you guys do some PD here at the school outside of this? You guys do some PD, right? Some professional development. So when you guys do like teacher training, right? You guys do some teacher training, right? And kind of, not a whole lot, but some. Okay. Well, here's what we found, all right? You guys are going to get now information that very few people actually have. What we found is that when teacher training happens, it usually happens in the form of like some one-off workshop, right? I come in and I do like an hour presentation, then I go away, right? Maybe it happens like, we get a whole group of teachers together and we do like a day-long workshop, right? And you learn a bunch of stuff, you get back to the classroom, and guess what? You're like, man, I forgot what I learned last week, right? Maybe it's actually like videos, okay? And you guys watch some videos. Or potentially, it's some coaching. But here's what we learned. In each of those ways in which teacher training happens, there's issues with continuity, right? With quality, right? With engagement, right? Just like sleeping through it, right? I'm just so bored. And there's issues with like having the local expertise to even do it. So here's what happens. The Center for American Progress actually did also a study, and they found that most teacher training is disconnected, so it doesn't actually help you in the classroom, or it's like these one-shot deals. And so that becomes what we call the teacher training treadmill, right? It's a waste of time for teachers. This is what's happening all over the place in almost every school district around the world, and especially around the US, all right? So here's what I said this year. What I said was, we're going to change that. So I actually went to Stanford University, and we said, we're in a world now where teachers actually need brand new skills. And we have to figure out how not to be on that treadmill. And here's what the trickier part, we don't even know entirely what those new skills are. Because remember, the world is changing. So somehow we have to equip teachers with a new kind of understanding. So here's what happened. I went to Stanford's Graduate School of Education, and we actually identified the 4 things that are most important to professional development, right, to teacher training. So I'm going to share those 4 things with you, and I'm sharing these with you because that will help you understand why we are doing what we're doing, all right? This is thought about. So the first thing is, it needs to be active, right? So as we go through this week, there's not going to be a whole lot of, people just talking at you. You guys are going to be involved the whole way through, right? Starting in about 5 minutes, okay? The other piece that we learned is it needs to be collaborative, all right? So the other piece that we know about teaching is sometimes you can just kind of get into your own classroom. Yeah, is that easy to do? You get to your own classroom, and then it's just all about you, right? Well, guess what? That world is over. So for this to work, you're going to need to be in a different frame of mind where you're willing to be collaborative with your peers in ways that you might not have been before, all right? The third thing that we found is it needs to actually be over time, all right? So PD needs to be either 14 or more hours spread out over time. So you guys asked the question, why didn't we do this back in January? Why didn't we do, all this and that? There's actually a reason that we're spreading this out, okay? And then the last thing that we learned was that technology really is very important. And here's the reason why. Because now that we have these computers, not only can kids, right, our students become self-directed learners and be a lot more independent, but guess who else can be? Any guesses? You guys, right? So there used to be a world where it was all about, okay, I'm a teacher and I'm going to wait for, the school to tell me what I'm going to learn next, right? Guess what about that world also is done. So what we are trying to instill is you guys are going to love this. You guys actually becoming like what we're hoping your students become. You guys hear when I say that? So what we're actually trying to do is have your students become more what? Give me some words. More self-directed, right? Any other words? More engaged, right? More inquisitive, right? Anybody else? More autonomous, right? More self-resourced. But guess what? What we know is that for them to be successful in this world, they're going to have to be those things. But also, guess what? If we are not those things, how can we instill that in them? Does that make sense? And if there's nothing else, guys, if there's nothing else that you get from today, hopefully there'll be a lot more other stuff. But if you can leave with even just that, it will take you in your classrooms light speed, like light years ahead, because you will leave being empowered to know, you know what? I can actually become that self-directed, self-learned, self-resourced teacher so that it's not about, oh my goodness, what's Redbird going to do next and this and that. We're actually going to help you become that so that now you determine your path. How does that sound? How does that feel? Is that different than how maybe, we thought about before? A little bit different, right? So I'm asking you guys to take a leap of faith because our goal is to actually get you there. All right? Who's with me? You guys are with me? All right. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm actually going to pass it over to Wally, and we're going to talk for the next, I'm going to say by about 45 minutes to an hour with activities around now getting into really some of the meat. But I wanted you guys to understand the methodology, like you said. I want you guys to understand the methodology of why we are doing it like that and how we're going to make sure that you guys don't become another, who was it? LAUSD. And guess what? That example is not just LA. It's like all over. Schools are doing what you guys are trying to do, and they're throwing laptops at teachers and iPads at teachers, and it's falling apart in so many situations. And what we are doing with these, as you guys are saying, just give us a computer, just get into it, there's a reason. Because that's what they did, and we know that doesn't work. All right? Okay, so pass it over to Wally.